Well, yeah, the real source of instability, I think, in the world right now, the economic instability is America. Almost all the real providers, I'm sure there are exceptions, almost all the companies that are adopting AI not as like a form of self-pleasuring, but as an operational, all are actually in America. And so you have this huge, and this is even more true on the battlefield. You have a huge disjunction where, I mean, I spent half my life in Europe. I wrote my PhD in German. On my father's side, they were Alt-Allemand and for 900 years. You have this huge disjunction. So the disjunction in America is a lot of the GDP growth is going to be powered by software that works. Software is transformational, what we call AI, not just large language models, and your ability to implement them. And that's going to fall probably to a very, very small number of people. So a lot of GDP growth, very small number of people profit. So that leads to dislocations in the U.S. The dislocation, I'm in favor of fighting and unifying the West. The dislocation between America and Europe is the startup scene here is anemic, and the real growth in providers are in America. There's another thing which is particularly disadvantageous, which is the idea, not throwing shade on any startups, but most people who actually make money on AI are going to already be established people implementing AI in various forms. So strong military gets stronger, strong software companies get stronger, people who are in a weaker position get much weaker. So that's then on the battlefield. There's these stats that are crazy. 84% of the top 50 tech companies in the world are American. That's okay. Imagine what that's going to be in 10 years. It's going to be 90%, 95%.
And why is that?
You know, the thing that, and I've been yelling, almost every European leader you've ever met, I've yelled at in private. And I've said the same thing over and over again. You're modeling this as intelligence. I spent my graduate school in Germany. French people think I speak French. It's much more like building a rock band. Like, this is a band thing. And like, you have to, and like, it's just, if you're building a rock band and the rock band happens to produce technology, America's very good at building rock bands. And like, part of it is you need a narrative. Part of it is, there's a religious element. We're Calvinists. We see a unification of good and success. My Lutheran brethren, or like, success is obviously not linked to you've done something right. So
you're saying the Europeans are the Lutherans.
Well, I mean, Germanic, there's Lutherans, but like Germanic culture is basically Lutheran. I mean, we have the Swiss, it's a huge in contradistinction. It's a Calvinist culture. Basically, we have the Dutch, they're Calvinists. But as a generalization, we associate moral integrity and winning as being intertwined. We're very good at playing in groups, we're not as focused on like the person is smarter and stealing, like not sharing information. And then we're very focused. Like for 10 years, people would yell at us at Palantir, "You're not a company, you're a cult." And what I would throw back at companies now is you're not a cult. Like, we are believers. Like, we have these products we built that are now decisive on the battlefield. Our U.S. commercial product is inarguably the most successful actual implementation of these things. We have a terrible sales force. We're growing so much. We have someone here. I was like, "Sorry, you can't leave America anymore. We have to rebuild the whole company." He's really upset because he wants to ski and meet nice people. Sorry. And you can do it in America. But it's like it, and then it's compounding this like thing, like we're always critiqued for being artificial, but you could also say we're adaptive. So you try 50 things, they work, they move on. It compounds into GDP advantage. If you just rough math, these are just rough math numbers, but U.S. GDP grew 60%. California GDP, like 61 to 91 was like 160% rough numbers, 110% in the last 30 years. You could see California's GDP going up to 200%. Of course, it only goes to a small number of people. What's going to happen in France and Germany? Like, how are you going to support the education I had in Germany with 20%, 10% GDP growth? And you just, like, and then on the military front, we've got to start actually working together. Like, we have all these things. Why aren't we sharing them? Why can't they be shared? So it's just this massive dislocation after this. But it is really, the experience of dislocation is going to be very different for U.S., very different from here. Now, the purpose of Palantir is to fight for the West. And so I really want Europe to get its act together. But part of it getting its act together is we can't just continue lying, half lies, halblugen. It's like we have to actually talk about these issues and argue with each other, as opposed to, yes, we all believe I believe in climate, I believe in fighting xenophobia. Okay, we all believe in this. Now, can we talk about some things we disagree on? And really talk about what is it going to mean when America has all the GDP growth? And it's like, yes, sure, we have this crazy political situation. Couldn't be crazier. But crazy political situation and GDP growth, that's much better than nice political situation and no GDP growth. Try that one on for size while having a world-class education. It will never work.
So, Alex, you're saying the U.S. is on track to having almost all of the innovation growth.
Well, we're at 84% of the top 50 startup of tech people now. This is basically pre-AIP, pre-AI. What do you think is going to happen? Like, my company is worth between $35 and $40 billion. I'm pretty optimistic we're going to continue to grow and get bigger. Okay, at $60 billion, you are on that list. Okay, it's very likely we'll be on that list. Like, any one of the products we built would be the #1 startup in Germany. Any one of them, we have 5. Our least successful product would be, so it's like, and if you are, yeah.
Alex, you're one of the great entrepreneurs in history, a great startup investor. Now you're one of the giants. As we look at AI, what is the opportunity for venture-backed startups versus the giants?
I'm actually very aligned with the venture community. I spent all my life hating the venture people because obviously there's a lot to hate. But but I'm very aligned with them on like Israel stuff right now because they know it's a strong tech company and I believe they're a part of the West and we should fight for them. But the companies that are doing well or in intermediate and large are going to get almost all the value. And I would be very careful if you're considering going to a small AI company. Think about it a lot.
How do you feel about the big getting bigger?
Getting much bigger. I'm actually an economic progressive. So I think the real issue is, well, what do we do to take care of the people who aren't participating? But I think it's a fact that the big and the intermediate big are going to get much, much bigger. But so there's always a tendency, and you'll see this, what you'll see in the US tech community is it's like half lies that somehow turn you into a product that, don't make any sense. You notice that you're being a little more miserable, but they kind of work. Or you'll find people that bend their moral narrative, so what I'm doing is good. So I know what Palantir's doing is crucial to the world, especially on the battlefield, and I love the American GDP story because I, in all modesty, think there's not much good in this world without America being strong. Okay, however, it is clearly a problem for America and every other country that all the money basically is going to go to a couple players. And we have a societal problem. How do you make sure everyone else has teeth and health and education and things that actually give people an opportunity? That is a really big societal problem. And talking about like all sorts of things that in my view make no sense, like weird permutations of identity politics, is not going to fix the problem.
Alex, when you talk about America being strong, how does the U.S. win against China?
America spends less than 1% on AI in the military. America needs to spend at least 1% on AI-enhanced battle systems, and every year, or at least every 6 months, in my view, you should add another point. And then it's very important to look at which programs are working, which software is proven on the battlefield. Basically, in business, people forget a banality. You win where you're winning. You have to take the central blessing that America has, which is AI, and the tech companies that are in this space. You also have to tell some of these tech companies, you cannot work in America and with our adversaries, and if you do, we're going to screw you. And so, like, I'm very famous in America. My goal was to be anonymous and have enough money that important people like you would take my call. And so I messed up the anonymous thing, but you're going to have to fix it
for sure.
Yeah. So we're going to force people. Some of the people in the room will not like this, to pick sides. You cannot sell to all sides. And that's we have to stop the transfer of this IP to our adversaries. We have to increase the amount of spending in the US DoD, and we have to make sure that spending actually goes to where it works. And I'll say something that many of my colleagues, the hawkish colleagues, will not like. in software, it does not matter how much you spend. It matters who got the money and did it work. So like I'm constantly like, I realize I'd love every European country to do 2% of GDP. I'd be even happier if 2% of GDP was actually going to things that worked, just like I'd be super happy if we really focused on that in America.
You mentioned Israel. You want the corporate world to be much more vocal.
Well, I want two things. First of all, the corporate world has set a standard by and large that they speak out on moral things. Okay, if you're going to speak out on grasshoppers and in every form, I'm against discrimination. I'm obviously would like a green friendly environment. If you have a precedent of speaking up, and then the one issue of our time, you somehow say you don't have an opinion. By the way, I think Israel has every right to defend itself. You might disagree. But saying you have no opinion after you've had an opinion on every other issue, you look like an idiot. And no wonder no one believes you. You've obviously been lying about every other issue. Like, I know a lot of these people, like, they don't believe in a lot of the stuff they're saying, and they'll tell you in 2 seconds in private. You can't say on this issue you have no opinion. You can say, hey, Karp is crazy. Palantir shouldn't provide the best weapons in the world. Yeah, everyone has an opinion. But to say you have no opinion, and then, there's all these discussions now. Let's increase trust. Okay, if you're obviously lying all the time, and you're obviously saying you have opinions that make no sense all the time, and then you obviously don't have an opinion on something that actually matters, why would anyone trust you? You think people are dumb? You don't think they notice that you don't believe the things you're saying? And this is corrupting every institution in the West. And I would tell my friends who they're like, now, if you've been in business and you've said for the last 20 years, I have no opinion, I only care about making money, bless your soul. You don't have to have an opinion on this. But if you've been having an opinion on every other thing, and suddenly you can't say anything about, I don't know, like on October 8th, and there's like anti-Semitism rampant, and you have no opinion, bless your soul when people think you are an idiot or you're a liar. And that's just how it is. And I'm telling everyone, it's like, you think you're safe by pretending you don't have an opinion where you do and pretending you do have an opinion where you don't. It's not a safe position because no one believes it. And by the way, you will see that the institutions you represent get worse people. Of course, and then how are you going to go to your employees and just flat out lie to them? But you think you're going to get good employees? You think Palantir over a 20-year period has gotten the best people. And I don't think there's any dispute about that. Like, Silicon Valley hated me. You know why they hated me? They're like, the circus cult leader Karp is marching people away from cockroach.com to helping the U.S. government be superior. Why would he do that? It's terrible. He should be supporting us. And you know what? They say the same. They're happy because, they have to pretend they're pro-West, but because I've beaten them over the head, or at least they can't pretend that they're on the other side. But in any case, we still get the best people. We retain the best people by and large. Many of the best companies in the world that have been built are ex-Palantirian. Some of them are in the room. Of course, you made a huge mistake, and it's going to cost you a lot financially. But that's your decision, and they all know it's true. But you can't. There's an expression in philosophy. It's called a performative contradiction. So if you say you're a relativist, you say all cultures are equal, including fascists and whatever. Yes, but then you criticize someone. There's a performative contradiction of pretending you have no opinion or only opinions that make no sense, obviously, and then not having an opinion on these issues. You just look like an idiot, and your institution will fail. And you see this everywhere in the West.
We finish always with one fun thing. Today, one fit thing. Alex, the last time you and I had talked on stage, you were obsessed with cross-country skiing, VO2 max, your use of oxygen during a workout, one of the best Axios finish lines ever, in its interview with Alex on Run Like a Snail. What's your current fitness obsession?
So I have this new theory. It's basically viewed as true by that if you can take your VO2 max to the highest quadrant in the quadrant below you, that is the most important thing you can do for your health. So I have a theory that if you increase your muscle mass, and like my VO2 max is like elite for like a 25-year-old, but if I go to elite for a 20-year-old, I lose muscle mass. I think for brain health, it's much better to be slightly older from a VO2 max and increase muscle mass. And that's where you get the optimal VO2 max brain health. And that's what I would encourage everyone in this room to think about.
And how do you get that?
You spend 3 years working on VO2 max, but it's very hard because you have to be incredibly disciplined to stay in zone 1 and do very technical intervals. You can look at how to do this. Just copy the Norwegians. They have the best. I mean, so you just, and then about 2 years in, you want to start doing real strength training. So not the strength training you do when you're single and you want to not be single or be multiple single, but actually making your muscles stronger and more flexible. And that's like bands and body weight exercises.
The people in this room who don't have 3 years, what's the one thing they should start doing tomorrow when they get back from Davos?
Well, run like a snail, meaning you run at the pace that you walk at, get a band, stay in zone 1, do that as much as possible, and you will, over a long period of time, transform your health.
Up next is my partner, is my Axios colleague Nicholas Johnson, who's going to be talking with our partner Qualcomm. Thank you for coming to Axios House. Thank you, Axio Events, and thank you, Alex Karp. Thanks, everybody.